important points.
Thank you. Coming up, we have Dr. Margot Thorning, who's Senior Vice President and Chief Economist at the American Council for Capital Formation. And she's going to talk about, should we release the hold on exports for energy, and specifically crude oil?
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Well, Rich, we here at Made in America, throughout our whole professional career, our radio career, our writing career, we've been very big proponents of exports. America just must export. Exports mean jobs, and these jobs are so vitally important. Export jobs generally pay 2 times more than our import jobs do. So they're very important to our people, and especially when we have so many people unemployed and underemployed, exports is a place that we should really focus. Now, should we be exporting energy? Should we be exporting crude oil? Well, there's an export ban on crude oil. Is that helping us, or is that hurting us? And what would it look like if we were to lift that ban? Well, we're very pleased to have on the show Dr. Margot Thorning, who's the Senior Vice President and Chief Economist at the American Council for Capital Formation. Dr. Thorning, welcome to Made in America.
Thank you.
Well, there was a subcommittee hearing just this last week in Congress about the crude oil export ban, and should it be lifted? Would it be helpful, or would it be hurtful? What do you say?
Well, a lot of the research that I've seen over the last year suggests that allowing crude oil to be exported from the U.S. would increase jobs by as much as 1 million a year. And,
1 million jobs.
Oh, my Lord.
And would also increase GDP by perhaps $550 billion a year. That's a Brookings study. It would also increase income, and it would actually tend to mitigate mitigate gasoline prices, because gasoline prices are set in international markets, not here in the U.S. So if we export more crude to the rest of the world, we will tend to push down the price of a barrel of crude oil, which means refiners are going to be able to get it a little cheaper. So it will tend to have a positive impact on GDP here in the U.S., and it will certainly not increase gasoline prices. If anything, it will lower them. And I encourage your listeners to log on to our website, which has a host of scholarly research from the government as well as think tanks. It's called unlockcrudeexports.org. So it's important that Congress continue to debate this issue, and hopefully one of the bills, either by Congressman McCall or Congressman Barton, will actually get enacted this year.
So just so the listeners understand, right now, we are not allowed to export crude oil, or are we very, very restricted for that?
Well,
and how do we overcome that challenge? Because you're very, very correct. I mean, our show is all about creating jobs. We want to talk to people about job creation. And this is a marvelous opportunity for the United States to, turn the economy around, get people back to good middle class, good paying job, real jobs, not service-oriented flipping burgers. And give us an opportunity to provide a more of a national security, Neil, for what protects this country from the rest of the world. So kind of a multi-layered question there.
So, and I'd like to throw this in. Once they do pass this in the House, which, assumingly they will, the president's going to say, I'm going to veto it because this is not part of his ideology.
Well, it isn't clear that he would veto it because I think the administration is somewhat sensitive to the fact that the economy is slowing. GDP is probably going to be lower this quarter than people had anticipated. Industrial production was down last month. So I think given that the Department of Energy is now forecast that we're going to continue to produce more oil in 2015 than we did in 2014, even though the price has fallen by half, I think if Congress, if the House and the Senate were to pass a bill allowing the export of crude to countries, I believe my hope is that the administration would not veto it. Right now we're seeing wells not being drilled and some wells being capped simply because it's not economic to bring the oil out of the ground at these low prices. And we would hope, that allowing crude to be exported from the U.S. would have a positive impact on the incentives to continue to drill and produce crude oil.
Well, wouldn't the folks overseas be very encouraged in trying to push us to do this? And we were just talking how, on a global basis, if we were to be able to do this, we could actually affect the price of gasoline in other countries on a global level. It seems like a wonderful opportunity.
Well, it's possible that if, as we export more crude, it will tend to depress crude prices internationally, and that means gasoline prices, all other things equal, would tend to fall, not just for us, but for the rest of the world. So, but an important aspect of exporting crude is that we're really being guilty of resource nationalism. We're hoarding this resource that we have an abundance of, and in fact our refineries can't even process all of the light sweet crude that's being produced. So we would strengthen our ties with other countries if we could export the crude to them.
So that sounds like a threat to Russia. It also sounds like a threat to the Saudi Arabians in the Mideast. And I would presume
ultimately the Iranians.
Ultimately the Iranians. And it seems like their lobbyists are going to be very busy making sure that we don't do this because it's in our best interest and their detriment.
Well, it certainly would make it harder for them to regain market share and to raise the price of crude. That's certainly true.
Well, Dr. Thorning, thanks for being on the show. It's a great topic, and I really hope that the president just doesn't dismiss this out of hand. But I'm skeptical. I really am skeptical. You're saying that some wells being tapped. I think and when the White House hears that kind of stuff, they're standing around doing high fives, shutting down the fossil fuel industry. But we shall see. I hope I'm wrong. Thanks for being.